Could you imagine an extra 1,300% more traffic to your business? Hi, this is Jaryd Krause, host of the Buying Online Businesses podcast. And in this episode, I'm speaking with Nathan Gotch, who went from $40,000 in debt to building a seven-figure SEO business and is now the head coach and trainer inside his SEO program, where he's helped thousands of businesses achieve first page rankings on Google. Now, Nathan and I talk about why you should stop gaming the system. We talk about his keyword research that he does using IRT, keyword research. We also talk about how to structure a content cluster and why structure a content cluster that way, what that actually helps you achieve. We also talk about increasing publishing velocity, which can be critical to getting more traffic. We also talk about why you need backlinks, and we dive into backlinks a little bit further. We also talk about how to track your top articles. Now, this is critical so you can ensure that you stay top of Google and get as much traffic from your top articles as possible. And we also talk about Nathan's favorite tools and why he likes to use those tools maybe over some other tools as well. Now, there's so much value in this episode. I know you're going to love it. Let's dive in. Do you want to build or grow your content website? Niche website builders have helped hundreds of people to take their content websites from a few $100s per month to over tens of thousands of dollars per month with crafted content creation, buying aged domains, and link building strategies. These strategies have helped people increase their traffic, authority, monthly earnings, and their website valuation too. Head to nichewebsite.builders/BOB/ to get 10% off any link building or 10% more from their content creation services. That's nichewebsite.builders/Bob/. I'll put a link in the description too. Nathan, thank you so much for coming on the Buying Online Business podcast. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on.
We just had a great little chat prior to hitting the record buttons, and I'm excited. I'm excited to chat to you about SEO and some of the things that you'd have done, seen, and help people with workarounds. Because SEO is like an ever-evolving thing, and there's always things to be changed, right?
Yeah, as far as you're breaking up a little bit, but I'm assuming you said SEO, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So SEO, I mean, obviously I've been doing this since 2011. So I've been through many cycles as far as algorithm changes and all kinds of fun stuff. And, yes, things change, but a lot of things don't change at all. And that's what I've kind of found. There's just certain core pillars that don't, have pretty much stayed the same since I started this game. So we can get into what those core pillars are if you want as well. But one thing I'll say is, not chasing algorithms has been one of the best decisions I've made in my career. So yeah, I used to play that game for a long time, and when I stopped doing that and I just focused on actually creating real value, I haven't lost any sleep because of SEO any longer. And I used to lose a lot of sleep because of SEO, mainly because I was doing pretty sketchy stuff. So
we talking black hat stuff?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. It's funny when you put yourself in a different mindset around SEO, when you can be so in the game of having to try and win the game and have to work really, really hard to do all these tricks and tactics and weird strategies to get as much as you can from the game. But there's other things in play outside of the game that allow you to play at a different type of game, the long-term game, and win with a lot less work and a lot less stress, right? And I see that in all areas of business and all areas of life. So tell me about that, because I do want to get into, some of the things that you've done and case studies you've helped to increase people's traffic and all that sort of stuff that people want to hear. But I think this is quite critical and quite key, especially for people that are looking to buy a business and they get sucked into the whole of the SEO world and just end up ripping their hair out.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you're in the business of buying businesses, and your online business in particular, which I'm assuming you're talking about, a website that has organic traffic is extremely valuable. So, I mean, if we think about any other type of traffic that you can have, organic traffic from Google or organic traffic from YouTube in particular as well, like two of the best traffic sources that a website can have. And I'm speaking from experience with my own business. Like most of my leads come from Google and YouTube. And so, if you have a situation like that where a business has both of those channels working, you're doing pretty well. But yeah, I mean, one of the key things is like if you're analyzing a business or you're trying to vet a website that you want to acquire, like you need to see how they got that organic traffic. And people who are doing gray hat SEO, if they're doing it well, you're not going to know a lot of those things that are going on behind the scenes. So like, for example, if they have a private blog network that they've been using to drive the performance, if they've done a good job, they'll hide all crawlers from accessing, those websites. So for example, you could throw that website into Ahrefs or SEM Rush or any of these tools, and it won't show that they have bad links or artificial links because they've blocked the crawlers. But then, as you get into the vetting discussion, you'll probably learn like, oh yeah, we have been using a private blog network. So if I was acquiring a business, I would never acquire it if they were using gray hat SEO, because yes, that organic search traffic might be there right now, but in a year, 2 years, who knows how long it will take, that could fall off a cliff. And eventually everyone gets caught, right? It's like all criminals. Pretty much all criminals end up getting caught eventually, right? They may get away with it for a long time. Not saying it's a criminal practice to do gray hat SEO, but still the analogy, you eventually do get nailed. And I've been nailed many, many times, and that's why I got away from it. In fact, 2015, there was a big update where Google basically targeted private blog networks specifically, and it destroyed a lot of people, especially me in particular, because I had a network of, I don't know, maybe 150 websites that I would use to link to our niche sites, to our client sites. I left massive footprints, and like I was good at it. I was good at hiding it from the crawlers and doing my best, but I got lazy and I started linking a lot of the same sites on these networks. And literally I woke up one day, I looked at my phone, I was like, oh, wow. I had manual actions from Google and Google Search Console on all of my client sites, my business site, like everything, manual action. I was like, I'm done. Like I was about to just pack my bags, shut my business down. I was like, that's it. Like, what am I going to do? I literally thought I was done for. And so what I did is I stressed out for a while, but then I got down to work. I was like, all right, how am I going to fix this? And the first thing was I declared I'm not doing this ever again. That was the first thing.
Right.
So, there's this quote from Warren Buffett where he's like, if you want to get out of a ditch, like, how do you get out of a ditch? Well, you stop digging. So that's, for me, that was like the first thing. Like, I'm going to stop digging a hole. That's step one. Step two is I'm going to figure out how to get these manual actions removed. And fortunately, I was able to get all of them removed. And I didn't lose a single client, believe it or not. And all I did was I just literally removed all these PBN links from all of these websites. And I saw a decline in performance, obviously, because losing any type of link can be detrimental. But yeah, I mean, that was like really the game-changing experience for me to transition to what people would deem more white hat SEO. I don't really believe in the whole, gray, black, white hat, whatever. For me, my philosophy on SEO is just content centric. So that's really what I care about, is like making content the foundation of everything that we do. And so making that transition was not easy because I had no clue how to actually do SEO. All I knew was how to manipulate an algorithm. So it took me a long time to figure that out, but now obviously we can talk about that. So
yeah, it's funny. You use the criminal analogy, trying to game the system. And if if we think about a criminal, they're trying all the things they can do to get away with illegal activity, right? And not get caught. Whereas you could do that, say, if you are a criminal and you could make money, but you've got this one big cloud hanging over you, which is the law, that's eventually it's going to come and get you. And you could take yourself out of that, right? And work within the law, have less stress, and you can even end up making far more money within the law. And if you think about the law being Google, because you're playing by their rules, I would say, usually, if you give them what they want within their rules, you don't have to worry about that, and you can end up making far more money with less stress. Is that what you're sort of hinting at?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I walk a fine line. I don't give Google too much power. I don't
Hmm.
believe that they're the god of what I should be
No,
doing.
of
I can
course.
still,
This is an analogy.
because
Don't-
yeah, of course. But yeah, I mean, even white hat SEOs or anyone doing SEO, of course, is still technically, manipulating the search engine to a
Mhm.
certain extent,
Mhm.
right? I mean, we're tapping into factors that influence Google's algorithm. So even just doing
Yeah.
traditional SEO, just like even finding a keyword and creating a piece of content around a keyword is technically, you're kind of tapping into their factors. Now, of course, you're not doing anything unethical or whatever,
Mm.
but still, we're all kind of playing that game a little bit. It's just how how much risk do you want in that
Yeah.
game?
And
So
how much emphasis do you put on that in terms of like, do you wreck your content and the quality of it just for SEO? Right?
right. Yeah, yeah, and
And
it's yeah.
yeah.
We can get into that obviously what quality looks like in SEO, but I'll let you keep going.
No, well, that's where I do want to get into it because you said before your main focus is on content, right? And if you're gonna give a great service to people, you're gonna put great content out there. You're going to you're going to be rewarded by the universe by making more money and helping people more, right? So the direct correlation of like how much you serve is how much you get back as well. So let's talk about quality content. Let's use it in the sense that we refer back to one of your case studies that you mentioned to me before we hit the record buttons. You said you've got lots of case studies, which is excellent, and congratulations. But there's
Thank you.
one particular one that you've been able to help somebody increase their traffic over 1,000%. Now, there's a few things that you did to do that. Let's talk about the content quality that you used, and then we'll move into some of the other things.
Sure. Yeah. So it's actually, I didn't mention one part of that when we were initially talking about that campaign, but when we first brought this client on, and just to give a little bit of background, this client is a media company in the legal space, which is very competitive. Anything in regards to law is
Mm.
just very competitive from an SEO perspective. So their website was interesting because they had 5,000 pieces of content when we first started. So they had 5,000 pieces of content on their blog and no organic traffic. So just imagine, like, how's that
What?
possible? Yes. So it's a very odd thing. But the reason is because all of the content was just, for a lack of a better word, kind of trash.
Yeah,
It was just not built for SEO,
valuable.
not adding value. Just so many problems with it: thin, duplicate, keyword cannibalization, every possible thing
Wow.
that you could identify in a content audit, they had it. So it was a
Mm.
decision for us that we're going to just prune everything. We're just gonna start fresh. Basically, was the philosophy. So that's what we did. We ended up deleting, I think it was like 90% of the content. So we deleted, like, I don't know, 4,000 pieces of content in about a couple months. Um, and so that was stage one, is like, let's start fresh. Okay. So we're going to start fresh. We're going to work with a good strategy and we're going to do this the right way. So clean that up, prune the content, let Google crawl and, re-index all that, get it out of the index, and make the website more lean. So that was the first step. Second step was we need to make the website incredibly blazing fast. And that's because it's a media site. They're content driven, content centric, like we're talking about here. So the content needs to be delivered fast and have a great user experience. So all we did is we just
Mm.
used Google AMP, which we talked about is accelerated mobile pages. We did it in a unique way. We didn't just do it for mobile. We did it site wide for desktop as well. So no matter what, where you land on that site, whether on desktop or mobile, it's still an AMP based website. And so just by doing that one implementation, they went from, Google PageSpeed Insight Score, Core Web Vitals, from like a, maybe 30 up to 100, like solid 100 on across almost every page. So that was kind of the foundational stuff, is like clean it up, get it fast. And now we talk about content. And content for us, we have a process built for that, which, the keyword research process is absolutely critical. So we start there. We find keywords that have really good intent. We like to start kind of bottom of the funnel, work our way up as far as intent.
Hmm.
We can talk more
Mm.
about intent if you want to get more granular. But then once you figured out the right keywords to target based on their website authority, based on the intent, based on how many links we're going to need to rank, then we can actually create that content. And so it's just a matter of creating it and ultimately increasing the publishing velocity. So over time, we want to be publishing more and more pieces of content. The more content we can get out there, the more topical authority and relevance we can build. In theory, we will get more organic traffic. Now, if you just do those three things and you do those really well, you can get SEO performance, you can get more organic traffic. But you got to have that last piece, which is the link building. So a lot of people can do those three things pretty well, but if you don't have the link building, it's going to take a very long time. So the link building is like pouring gas on the fire, right? And that's so what we do is we go and we start acquiring editorial links to this new content, every single month, editorial links. And the result is, within the first 6 months, we grew the traffic by, it's like 500%. And now they're up, I don't know, something insane, 1300% or something at this point in a year. So, and that's from not getting organic traffic for 5-6 years. So, it's a pretty big increase. And we didn't do anything super crazy. So we can get into that.
So I do want to come back to intent, because intent is, I understand the concept of intent, but I'd like to hear it from you in terms of when you're looking for a high intent keyword, the ideology around it is that the person searching for that type of keyword has a high intent of solving a problem or purchasing a product, right? So what sort of, is that the route that you would explain it, and why would they need a high intent keyword?
Yeah. So intent is a huge piece of like our keyword research process. In fact, it basically gives us our direction of how we're going to go. So like within our keyword research process, depending on the intent of the keyword, if it has good commercial or transactional intent, it will get a higher score compared to if it just has informational intent. So let's do kind of more like a practical example here. So let's say it was a Los Angeles personal injury lawyer. Okay. So a transactional bottom on the funnel keyword with high intent would be Los Angeles personal injury lawyer, Los Angeles car accident lawyer. That would be, middle to bottom of the funnel. It's technically not all the way down and transactional because it's not brand specific. So actually let me do a different example because it'd be a little bit easier. So let's do SEM Rush. I mean, everyone knows who SEM Rush is, Ahrefs, whatever. In the case of SEM Rush, we'll start top of the funnel and work our way down. So top of the funnel keywords for SEM Rush that would be really valuable would be, what is SEO? Okay. Now that's an informational intent based keyword. Yes, it's relevant to what they do, but it's not going to drive direct conversions. Very rarely do informational keywords drive direct conversions. You're looking at sub 1% conversion. Yeah.
I want to pause there and add to that, if I may. The reason why it's not a high intent keyword for people listening, and I think this is quite critical, Nathan, and I apologize for jumping in, but the reason it's not a high intent keyword is because the person that's searching for that keyword, they're at a different stage in their journey. They're basically finding out what SEO is. Whereas when you get to the different part of the funnel with different types of keywords with higher intent, they're going to be people that are closer towards purchasing or working with SEM Rush. Would you say that's correct?
Exactly. Yes, that is correct. Yeah. And it's the reason why it's so important to understand is, and I'll kind of walk through the funnel of how that would look, but it's depending on the intent that allows us to decide what that page should look like. Right. So if it's what is SEO or how do I do SEO, we're going to deliver blog content that is informational in nature and is educational in nature, because someone at that stage is not ready to buy anything. They're just, they're in the learning and the education phase. Now, once they get to the site, you can move them down further the funnel. But as far as like looking at it just from pure organic search traffic, they're just top of the funnel. More than likely they'll bounce, right? So like 80% of visitors never come back to a website. Right. So, so that's why there's other things we can talk about, like make sure you have retargeting in place and XYZ, try to get them on your email list, things of that nature. But go back to SEO, we have top of the funnels informational. Next phase of this process is going to be more in the investigative phase, right? So maybe what they do is after they search what is SEO, let's say it's a business owner, they search what is SEO. Then they find out they're like, oh, well, so like there are tools that you can use for SEO. I didn't know that was a thing. So now they search best SEO tools. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're getting somewhere, right? Now we're starting to get closer to what SEMrush actually offers. So that's in the investigative phase. Now the next two phases are where the magic really starts to happen, which is comparison and then transactional. So comparison are really, really good queries because now it's going to be brand specific. Because what will happen is when they land on, let's say it's a blog post showing the top 10 SEO tools, it's going to show SEMrush, it's going to show Ahrefs, it's going to show Moz, and now they're brand aware, right? So before they weren't brand aware, they just knew about the general problem that they were trying to solve. Now they're brand aware. Yeah. So the clear next phase is, okay, SEMrush versus Ahrefs, SEMrush review, those types of queries, which are more review-like or comparison-like. And now we're really getting towards the bottom. Last phase of this, which is, now they've decided that SEMrush is a good fit for them. They're going to look for SEMrush free trial, okay, or SEMrush coupon code. And so at that point, we're very bottom of the funnel. They are ready to go. They are blazing hot. And so that's the way that we try to map it out. And it's every industry is different and depending on the business model. So like that was a SaaS model. The way it happens in e-com, like if you're selling shoes, would be very different. It's always going to be different, but the general concept of the funnel from an organic search perspective is game changing, honestly. So
it is. I want to tie this in with another sort of strategy or concept that other SEOs use and a lot of people in our space talk about is using like a silo and using that same method of keyword research, top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom of a funnel, but you could incorporate that with a silo, or people that don't know what a silo is, basically a structure of how you create your content with a pillar article and then different articles around it that can be supporting articles. There's different names and different terminologies that people will use. So it depends on what people click with what I've just said, which is why I've thrown out a bunch of different terms. But my question to you, Nathan, is that when you go through this process of finding the different intent keywords through top of funnel all the way to the bottom of funnel, are you saying the first keyword that's not so high intent is what is SEO? Would that be a pillar article? And then as you go through it, those other articles that you just go down with that have higher intent, would they be more supporting articles that will be internally linked from that pillar article that is a low intent keyword?
Yeah.
I know that's a big question there. There's a lot in
that. Yeah. It is. No, but what you're describing is really the concept of what I call it clustering. A lot of people call it siloing, but I call it clustering. Yeah. And the reason for that, because visually it makes a little more sense to me. So like, for example, if we looked at, let's just say the topic of SEO. First of all, none of us would be able to rank for SEO at this point. It'd be an impossible task and it's a bad keyword to target. But let's just say SEO is the middle, okay? And then we build out these supporting assets around SEO that go deeper and deeper into the sales funnel. So you would have maybe SEO strategy, link building, backlinks, like all of these different supporting topics to build upon. But what we do, one huge mistake that people will make though, is they look at the funnel, and what tends to happen when people do SEO is they immediately go to the top of the funnel and they start focusing on brand awareness based keywords. Big mistake. That's one of the biggest mistakes that people make, because the goal of doing SEO is to make money. Okay. So at least for most people. Okay. Of course, there's reputation management and other disciplines within SEO. But for the most part, most businesses are doing SEO because they want to get an ROI. They want to make money. So when we're working with clients, like that's why we start at the bottom of the funnel, because those keywords, we know if we rank for those keywords, they're going to see an immediate increase in revenue, which is really what we want. So in the case of, SEMrush was our client, that we would live and breathe at that bottom of the funnel until we completely got it nailed down. But with that said, what's fascinating by doing that is it actually, what tends to happen is, like, let's say we wanted to rank for best SEO tools. That's a keyword that we want to target because it's super important to us. If you want to rank for that, you're going to have to create supporting assets to build topical authority and trust to rank for it. So what tends to happen is even when you do target the middle of the funnel or the bottom of the funnel keyword, you still have to go up the funnel anyway to build out those supporting assets like you're describing as far as clustering. So
Mm-hmm.
these things are all intertwined. But as far as internal linking, like everything should be linked together, everything as much as you can. So that helps as well.
Yeah, yeah, because that's another piece of the puzzle. Like there's so many pieces of the puzzle here when we talk about doing keyword research. People may find a keyword, but they can't actually, they'll create a piece of content for that, but they won't rank for that because their site doesn't have the authority or the big enough brand or whatever you want to call it in that niche or space to be able to rank for that compared to what, say, a competitor that does have the authority would. So that's a very, I'm glad that you brought that up. So go on.
I was just going to mention one point on that because you brought up something very important, and I don't want to give misinformation because I'm focusing heavily on intent, but intent is just one piece of the keyword qualification process. So intent is just giving us kind of like the direction that we want to go in our way to kind of score these keywords ultimately. But like in my keyword research process, we have the IRT score. So intent, relevance, and trend. And that's kind of like the first thing that we look at. So, what is the intent? If it has good transactional intent, it gets a higher score. If it has informational intent, it gets a lower score. Then the relevance. So that's very important. It's not the relevance of the keyword to the business. It's the relevance of the keyword to what they offer. So in the case of my business, I sell SEO training. So anything like Boston SEO training, local types of training like that is extremely relevant to my core offer. Now, are SEO tools the keyword? Is that relevant to my core offer? It's not directly relevant to what I offer, but it's relevant generally in the same vertical. So it would get a lower score. So it's a very important distinction. And then obviously trend as well is looking at like, okay, if you're trying to figure out what keywords best to go after, and they're kind of even on those two first pieces, the one that's trending upward obviously should get the priority. That's literally just the first phase of the process, because then after that, what we have to do is we have to look at how many links it's going to take to rank, which is one of the biggest variables. Because if it's going to take, 300 referring domains to rank for the keyword, it's going to be a money pit. And that's what you got to be really careful of. So there's a lot that goes into this process of just identifying the right keywords. And most people, keyword research to them is like, throw a website into Ahrefs and like, hey, this one's got good KD. Let's go and create a piece of content. But it's not, that's not the way it should be done, honestly. So I could spend all day talking about keyword research, but we'll move on. So
yeah, I think maybe we'll come back and we'll break down some of these in further podcasts if you're open to it, because there's so much. Like when I hear you say one thing, it's like that's another universe that I could open up.
Right. For sure.
And we could go on for an hour on each one. So let's make this like maybe a low intent keyword, but cover a lot of things broadly in this podcast. So once we've got the keyword research done, say we've gone through that whole process and we've done it with different, we've added all the pieces of the puzzle within the keyword research together, then we can move on to creating that piece of content. You mentioned to me that you increased velocity of publishing. What does that look like? So for this person that, went from increase their traffic within 6 months of 500%, and they're up like 1,300% over a 12-month period. How did you start increasing the publishing velocity of content? Why? And then at what stage did you increase it and by how much?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of resources typically. So, I mean, some businesses have more resources to dedicate to copywriting. Yeah. Yes, they have more money to spend. Exactly. So, so it depends on the budget that we're working with the client. It also depends on the infrastructure of their team as well. So in the case of this particular client, he has a lot of subject matter experts that can write content. So we had an advantage in that way. So all we had to do was just basically feed the machine and they can start pumping them out the way that we want them to be pumped out. Right. So we're giving them the SEO content briefs. We're building those out and then we're handing those off to subject matter experts to write that content. And then we optimize the content on the back end. Right. So it's we're working together to get that published.
Got ya.
And then it's a matter of just like seeing how much can we do for the first month, and for like, okay, that wasn't too bad. Now let's increase it by a little bit, and an extra piece a week, or it's just a slow iterative process over time to see how far can we go. But the goal is like, we want to build topical authority and relevance as fast as possible. Like that's our goal, is to build that up very quick. And then also at the same time we get into link building, but having the links to support those assets as, at the same speed.
Yeah, okay. So you also talked, and I want to get into link building as well. You also talked about each piece of content, to get it ranked, it may need a certain amount of links. So a certain amount of authority sort of injected into that piece of content with those types of links that have authority, right? So with what would it look like for somebody that it doesn't have that much resources, limited resources, versus somebody that has a little bit of resources versus somebody that has a lot of resources? So people on their journey that they're listening, they're going, all right, I'm at this phase and this is what I should be doing with my content creation velocity and links.
Yeah. I mean, if it's a budget discussion, then let's say you don't have a big budget for link building, then obviously you're going to want to spend most of your time and effort on content, but more importantly, focusing on keywords that you can really rank for without having a lot of authority. So easiest thing to do is find those keywords that have the low KD, because with Ahrefs in particular, you could use SEM Rush as well. They have their own KD metric. But looking at those keywords that are technically easier and making that your focus in the beginning, because it's hard to rank without links, especially when you start to get a little more competitive. And also, it's important to mention that let's say you do have a little bit of budget you can dedicate to link building. Before you build any links, the very first thing you have to do is figure out what are the gaps between you and the competitors. So a lot of people will go into Ahrefs. They'll see, okay, this keyword has a 5 KD. So I'm going to need, 4 or 5 referring domains to rank. Okay. Yeah, that seems like a good idea. It doesn't seem too bad. But they neglect the fact that the websites that are ranking have incredibly high website authority. Okay. So Ahrefs metric, the KD, is just measuring page, the links going to the page itself, the websites, the pages that are ranking for that keyword. It isn't measuring the overall website authority. Yeah. So we have to look at both. You have to see, okay, what is our website authority compared to the competitors first? So we need to see that first. If that gap is big, then you're going to have to acquire more links on the page level to make up that gap, right? So it's not an exact like equation with KD where you're like, okay, I need 5 referring domains. I get 5 referring domains and then I'm going to rank. It does not work like that unless you have the authority already, which in a lot of cases you won't. So that's why you have to continually be building the authority of the website at the same time, which can only be done through link building, of course, and a matter of acquiring more referring domains. So you have to look at both. And so when we're deciding like, okay, is this a good keyword to target? We're looking at average DR is what we look at in the top 10 for the keyword. So average DR, we compare that against our target website. If the gap is really big, then we're like, okay, we got some work to do. If it's not too big, then we're like, okay, we can probably be in the estimate that Ahrefs is giving us, basically. And then we just try to hit that target. Sometimes we get there based on that target. Sometimes we don't. But we can talk a little bit about what you do at certain stages, but ultimately just knowing those two factors is really important. A lot of people just focus on the page level. It's a big mistake. And that's why you'll see some people be like, I followed the KD and I got the amount of links it said, but they're missing the biggest piece, which by far I'd say out of like, if I had to pick one ranking factor that mattered the most, I would say website authority is probably the most important. It's absolutely huge. It's huge. So
it's funny that people will start a website and then they'll just create all this content based off some keyword research, and they are like, well, I've created all this content. How come I'm not ranking for it? Well, you don't have an authority, and you're trying to target keywords that you can't rank for and you couldn't rank for unless you do have that authority, which comes from link building. But you got to have content to have to link to as well for that link building. So there's multiple, there's so much to it than just, let's follow the formula that I've heard on a podcast. There's just so much more depth to it, right?
Yes, to say the least. And in fact, the biggest mistakes are made in the research process, because if you go and you target keywords that your website isn't capable of ranking for, you're wasting your time. You're wasting your time. You're going to waste your money. If you target a keyword that's too competitive and you didn't know it was too competitive, you're just going to dump money into it and you're never going to rank. So it actually kills your profit when you make mistakes on the keyword research level. Like it destroys your profit on the campaign. So that's why like we spend the first month of every campaign just on keyword research. We do, technical audits and all that good stuff. But the keyword research database, like my team knows that like they need to focus on that. And like, that's where they need to live for the first month to truly make sure we're not going to make mistakes. And it's like, I'm sure you've heard the quote, like from Abraham Lincoln, like if he's going to chop down a tree, he's going to spend the first 7 hours sharpening the axe. Right. So it's the same exact thing with SEO. People just want to jump right in and start doing like, and I understand that taking action is the key to success in anything, but in this case, don't jump in too fast. You got to really make sure you're targeting the right stuff because it can be detrimental. It really can. And I'm speaking from experience, by the way. I've targeted keywords out of pure ego as an SEO. I'm like, I could rank for that, no problem. And then, a year later, I'm like, man, I've invested like 20 grand into ranking for this keyword. I'm still like number 7. And it's just because that gap is too big. I couldn't narrow that gap. And it's like, it's just not worth it at a certain point. I mean, 20 grand trying to rank for a keyword that I'm never going to rank for, 20 grand into YouTube ads. I mean, like these are very, I get a lot more value from that than that. So it's just, you got to be smart about these things. So,
then that's where you become a better business owner is resources, allocating your resources really.
Absolutely. It's huge.
Yeah, I want to come into say people have gotten a lot from the keyword research. They're starting to increase their velocity. They understand, getting links to these pieces of content. Once we've realized, all right, we've got a couple of good pieces of content ranking quite well, or we've just bought a website that already has, the top 10 pages. How do you suggest people tracking these pages and their top rankings? Like, what are some of the KPIs people should be looking for in terms of like their ranking position, traffic? What are some of the other things? And these can move into monetization with affiliate income and ad revenue and stuff like that. But are there some key KPIs that people should be tracking for their top pages so they can maintain those results, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, the most obvious KPIs in SEO, and I can only say like as far as what we track as far as clients go, and in our own businesses, but like obviously individual keyword rankings is a good thing to do. People will debate this, but ultimately like it's a pretty tried and true method. You target a keyword, you put it into your rank tracker, and you see the performance. Now, of course, it's not that clear because Google has all kinds of stuff going on in the SERPs. They have personalization, they have local personalization. If you're logged in, you're going to see different results. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. So the rank trackers are not 100% accurate, but they still give you a pretty good idea of where you are for that keyword. Now, that's stage 1. Stage 2 is total organic traffic inside Google Analytics. To me, that is the most important because at the end of the day, like we're trying to grow traffic, right? And that's the most accurate tracking is Google Analytics as far as organic traffic goes. So, those are 2 things. And then also Google Search Console is another one that we use just to see like broadly how we're doing as far as, and it's not super accurate in a lot of ways, but it still gives you a broad idea. And it also allows you to look at CTR, which you can't get from anything else. So you can look at organic CTR. And if you're ranking for a keyword, let's say your position, we actually do this in our audit. We find pages that have low CTR. So we'll find, let's say you're ranking number 3 and your CTR is below 1%, something is wrong there, right? Because historically, if you look at CTR data for organic keywords, for informational keywords, you're going to be roughly 40% for number 1, and then it gets chopped in half to like 20% for number 2, and then maybe like 15% for number 3 on average. And also, once again, going back to intent, it really changes depending on the intent. But let's say it's informational. If you're getting less than 1%, you're ranking number 3, something is wrong, right? Something is wrong with your copy. Something is wrong with your title. Something is not appealing to that searcher for them to click on your result. Now, it could also be other variables.
Because you should be technically getting anywhere from 5 to 15%, right?
Yeah. So we're looking at pages that have like really below average CTR and then
Yeah.
attacking those. But there's a lot of things that affect it. So of course, copywriting is a big one, but also just like sometimes you'll go and do a manual analysis in the search results. And you're like, oh, whoa, I didn't know there was an FAQ thing that's pushing us way down below the fold. So, there's other things that affect it that are outside of your control, but that's another reason why Google Search Console is so important, because you can run tests and see, you can run organic CTR tests with Google Search Console data, which is a really big deal. Now, there are also other SEO testing tools out there, but you can do it manually with Google Search Console. It's a little tedious, but yeah.
So checking, say we've got our top 10 articles that we want to maintain those rankings. So you'd be checking organic traffic through Google Analytics and then using Google Search Console to check the CTR, and
Yes.
then using a rank checker to check their rankings. Are they the three main tools, and then also are they the three main metrics you'd be looking at, or are there other things that are quite valuable to be tracking as well?
Yeah, those are important. Obviously, within Google Analytics, depending on the type of business, you probably be tracking goals too. So, but if it's like an affiliate website, it can be a little awkward. It's not really having any goals other than like outbound clicks. But depending on the business model, we'll be tracking things in there. But the other thing we also like to track is either with SEM Rush or Ahrefs is looking at, the total link profile growth over time. So we want to see nice steady climb of, the link profile growing over time. Also, another thing I like to see is just, each page and just generally the website as a whole. I just want to see that the domain itself has steady growth. That's important because we've actually seen a correlation to a decrease in link velocity and a decrease in performance. And my speculation is just that Google is saying, okay, well, yes, this website was popular at one point, but now it's not popular anymore. So now, that's because if we're thinking of backlinks as votes, that would fall in line with that philosophy. The other thing we'll do with SEMrush and Ahrefs is we're looking at just the total organic keyword footprint as well. So just seeing like, if we have 10,000 keywords ranking in SEMrush in the top 100, we want to see that that's growing over time. Okay, now we're at 11,000 and then 15,000. Not necessarily the keywords in the top 10, but just like, is our footprint growing? Because that's a good sign. So, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Wow, so much in that. I think we're going to have to get you back on for another discussion into one of these topics in far more depth. I wanted to ask you, because we talked about so many tools, what are your top 2 free SEO tools? And then what are your top 2 paid SEO tools that you would recommend to people?
Ooh, top free tools for SEO.
Top 2. Top 2 for each.
Okay, yeah. I would say if I had to pick, if I had a gun to my head and I had to pick 2, first would be Screaming Frog. SEO Spider would be number 1 by far. I love that tool. I've been using it for, too long. Let's just say that much. But it's like, it is the key to running effective SEO audits, technical audits. Like this
is a paid tool, though, right?
They have a free version and they have a paid version. So the free version basically just limits how many pages you can crawl. So, but it's pretty affordable. I think it's like $150 a year. So it's it's a good business investment. So that's the first one. Second one is a toss-up, because I would say, either SEMrush or Ahrefs. You can't go wrong with either. You really can't. SEMrush has really upped their game. They've really been working hard to compete with Ahrefs as far as on the SEO side. So if you're looking for something that's a little more high powered and attacks a lot of different parts of the digital marketing process, then SEMrush is probably a better option. If you're looking for something that's a little more easier maybe to understand, maybe a little friendlier for just SEO, Ahrefs is probably better in that regard. But as far as data goes on those two, it's a toss-up. It's a toss-up.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. So they're your 2 paid ones, I guess. You can use the free versions for each of those, I guess. But they're 2 free SEO tools that you would use? You would recommend?
Yeah, obviously Screaming Frog is free. So, technically that would be one of them. But also SiteLiner. SiteLiner is 100% free. You can run a website through there, find all kinds of duplicate content, all kinds of content-related issues. That's one. Yeah, I'm trying to think of free tools. I don't use many free tools because the paid ones are so good. So
yeah, that's right. We use just for due diligence, we use SiteLiner, Ahrefs.
yeah,
You can use SEM Rush as well. But guys, SiteLiner is very valuable. In fact, I have a due diligence framework. If anybody is listening and they're going to buy a site, make sure you get my due diligence framework because it has all these different links to free tools that you can use to check the website and the SEO profile of the website prior to buying it, which is critical to due diligence, which you mentioned before at the start of the episode as well, Nathan. So guys, thank you so much for listening. Nathan, thank you so much for coming on. Where can we send people to check out more of your SEO content?
You can go to gotchseo.com. Obviously, I have my blog there and you can learn there. And I have my YouTube channel, just crossed 1 million views over there. So there's a lot going on. And that's kind of the video. Yeah, thanks. A lot of video content as far as SEO goes. So you could get a good education on SEO just with my free content alone. So
cool. Yeah, check it out, guys. That channel is valuable. For everybody listening, thank you for listening. I want you to think of 2 to 3 people that either have a website or are about to have a website and understand that SEO is important. Please do them a massive, massive, massive favor and share this podcast episode with them. There's so much value in this. It helps them, it helps us, and it's going to be a win for everybody. So please do them a massive favor and share this podcast episode with them, and I'll speak to you guys on the next one.
Hey YouTube watcher, if you thought that video was good, you should check out this video here on the 2 best types of websites beginners should buy. Or check out my playlist on how I made my first 100K from buying websites and how to do due diligence. Check it out. It's an awesome playlist. You'll enjoy it.